My parents tried to sabotage my relationship because they didn't want to lose their personal chef, then spread lies about me to our extended family. So, I decided to tell everyone the real story. Now they're begging me to come back because they can't handle cooking for themselves. I'm 19 and still living at home while attending community college in Portland, Oregon. Ever since I was 14, I've been the one responsible for all the cooking in our house. Not just helping out occasionally. I mean planning meals, grocery shopping, cooking breakfast, lunch and dinner every single day for our family of 5. My parents both work office jobs with normal hours, but they convinced me early on that I was naturally gifted at cooking and that it would be selfish not to use my talents to help the family. At first, I was actually proud of it. I loved cooking and thought I was being mature and helpful. But by the time I hit 17, I realized I was basically a live-in chef who never got a day off. While my friends were hanging out after school, I was at the grocery store planning dinner for 5 people. While they were sleeping in on weekends, I was making elaborate breakfast spreads because my dad needed protein to start his day right. I never complained because my parents made it clear that good daughters take care of their families. My mom would always say things like, "Madison, you're so much better at this than I am, and what would we do without you?" My dad would brag to his friends about how he had a gourmet chef at home. It felt good to be needed, even if I was exhausted all the time. Looking back, I can see how they slowly manipulated me into taking on more and more responsibility. When I was 14, it started with helping my mom with dinner prep. She'd say things like, "Oh, Madison, you're so much faster at chopping vegetables than I am," or "Your seasoning is so much better than mine." Within 6 months, I was cooking the entire meal while she sat at the kitchen table scrolling through Facebook. By 15, I was responsible for planning the weekly menu and making the grocery list. My mom would drive me to the store, but I'd be the one walking through every aisle, calculating portions for 5 people, checking prices, and making sure we had everything needed for the week. She'd follow behind me with the cart, occasionally commenting on how organized and mature I was. When I turned 16 and got my driver's license, even the grocery shopping became entirely my responsibility. Every Saturday morning, I'd wake up early, check the fridge and pantry, make my list, and spend 3 hours at 3 different stores getting the best deals on everything from fresh produce to bulk items at Costco. My weekends, which should have been about sleeping in and hanging out with friends, became about meal prep and grocery runs. The breakfast situation was particularly ridiculous. My dad convinced me that he needed a proper breakfast to perform well at work. Not just cereal or toast, I'm talking about fresh fruit salad, made from scratch pancakes or waffles, perfectly scrambled eggs, bacon cooked to the exact right crispiness, and fresh squeezed orange juice. Every single morning before school, I'd wake up at 5:30 a.m. to have everything ready by 7 when he came downstairs. My siblings, Emma and Jake, got used to this arrangement too. Emma would complain if her lunch wasn't interesting enough compared to what her friends brought. Jake would refuse to eat anything that wasn't exactly the way I made it. If I tried to take shortcuts or suggest they make their own lunches, they'd whine to our parents about how I was being lazy. The dinner situation was even more complex. My dad had specific requirements for different days of the week. Monday was comfort food night. Think pot roast with mashed potatoes and green beans. Tuesday was international cuisine night, where I'd make everything from Thai curry to Italian osso buco. Wednesday was healthy night with grilled fish, quinoa, and steamed vegetables. Thursday was family favourite night, where I'd make everyone's individual favourite dish, which meant cooking 4 different meals. Friday was usually something special because it was the end of the work week. And then there were the special occasions. Every birthday meant a homemade cake from scratch. Not just any cake, but each person's specific favourite flavour with homemade frosting and elaborate decorations. Holidays were a nightmare of cooking for days in advance. Thanksgiving alone required me to start prep work a week ahead, and I'd spend the entire 4-day weekend in the kitchen. My parents' friends started to expect these elaborate meals whenever they came over. My mom would volunteer to host dinner parties, knowing full well that I'd be the one doing all the work. She'd take credit for the menu planning and execution, accepting compliments with a modest, "Oh, Madison helped a little, but I taught her everything she knows." The poker nights were the worst. Once a month, my dad would invite 6 of his colleagues over for cards, but it wasn't just about providing snacks, it was a full catering job. Appetizers, main course, dessert, and specific drinks. These men would arrive expecting restaurant-quality food, and my dad would give me a budget of $200 to $300 to make it happen. I'd spend the entire day before cooking, and then I'd have to serve everything throughout the night, clean up as they played, and have fresh coffee and dessert ready when they finished. The worst part was that I couldn't even hang out upstairs and do homework during these poker nights. My dad expected me to be available to refresh drinks, bring out more food, and basically wait on them hand and foot. I'd spend 5 hours serving these men who barely acknowledge my existence, except to compliment my cooking to my father. Between school, homework, cooking, grocery shopping, meal planning, and serving at various events, I had zero time for anything else. I quit the debate team in sophomore year because I couldn't make practice. I never joined any clubs or sports because my afternoons were devoted to dinner prep. I'd never been on a date, never been to a school dance, never even hung out with friends on weekends because I was always in the kitchen. My grades were decent, but not great because I was exhausted all the time. I'd often fall asleep doing homework after spending 4 hours cooking and cleaning up dinner. My parents didn't seem to care about my academic performance as long as meals appeared on the table on time. The few times I tried to push back over the years, my parents would hit me with guilt trips about family responsibilities and how cooking is a life skill that would serve me well. They'd remind me how expensive it would be to eat out all the time or hire a chef, and how lucky I was to have a talent that could save the family money. When I started looking at colleges during my senior year, they steered me toward local community colleges and schools I could commute to. When I asked about dormitories or schools in other states, they'd panic about who would handle the cooking. They never outright said I couldn't go away for college, but they made it clear that it would be selfish and irresponsible to leave the family without their chef. So I enrolled at Portland Community College, choosing classes that would fit around my cooking schedule. I picked morning classes so I'd be home in time to start dinner prep. I couldn't take evening classes because that's when I needed to be in the kitchen. My entire college schedule revolved around their meal times. Everything changed 3 months ago when I met Tyler at college. He was in my psychology class, and we got paired up for a project on family dynamics. The irony wasn't lost on me. Tyler was sweet, funny, and actually listened when I talked. We started studying together, which turned into coffee dates, which turned into actual dates. Tyler was completely different from anyone I'd ever met. He was independent, living in his own apartment with a roommate, managing his own schedule and responsibilities. He cooked simple meals for himself, did his own laundry, and seemed genuinely shocked when I mentioned some of my family responsibilities in passing. "Wait," he said during one of our study sessions, "you cook every single meal for your entire family? Every day?" I nodded, not understanding why he looked so surprised. "I mean, I'm good at it, and they're all so busy with work and school. But what about your free time?" he asked. "When do you hang out with friends or just relax?" I realized I didn't have an answer to that question. Free time wasn't really a concept in my life. For the first time in years, I had something in my life that was just mine. Tyler didn't know about the full extent of my cooking situation at home. I'd just tell him I had family responsibilities when he asked why I couldn't hang out certain times. I was embarrassed to admit I was basically the family servant. The problem started when I began spending more time with Tyler. I'd rush through dinner prep so I could meet him for study sessions. I started making simpler meals instead of the elaborate spreads my family was used to. One evening I made spaghetti with jarred sauce instead of my usual homemade marinara with fresh herbs and garlic bread. My dad took one bite and made a face. "What's with the basic dinner, Madison? This tastes like cafeteria food." My mom chimed in, "You've been distracted lately. Are you feeling okay?" I explained that I'd been studying more for my midterms, which was partially true. I was studying, just not always alone. The complaints started getting more frequent. Jake whined that his lunch sandwiches weren't interesting anymore. Emma complained that I'd forgotten to make her favourite cookies for her study group. My dad mentioned that his breakfast seemed rushed and wasn't as good as usual. I tried to explain that I was taking more challenging classes this semester and needed more time to study, but they seemed to think my education should work around their meal schedule, not the other way around. Things came to a head 2 weeks later when Tyler asked me to go to a concert with him on a Friday night. I was so excited. I'd never been to a real concert before. I told my parents I wouldn't be home for dinner and suggested they could order pizza for once. My mom's face went white. "What do you mean you won't be home for dinner?" "Friday is your dad's poker night. You always make those stuffed pork chops and roasted vegetables for his friends." I'd completely forgotten about the poker night. For 2 years, I'd been catering my dad's monthly poker games, not just dinner, but appetizers, desserts, the whole 9 yards. His friends always raved about the food, and my dad loved taking credit for having such a talented daughter. "Can't you guys just order Chinese food?" I suggested, "or I could prep everything in advance and you could just heat it up." The look on my dad's face was like I'd suggested burning the house down. "Madison, you can't just abandon your responsibilities for some boy. These are my business colleagues. I can't serve them reheated leftovers." "It's not abandoning anything," I protested. "It's one night." My mom jumped in with her guilt-trip voice. "Honey, family comes first. You'll have plenty of time to date when you're older and living on your own. Right now, we need you here." I felt that familiar knot in my stomach, the same one I got whenever I tried to do something for myself and they made me feel selfish for it. But this time I also felt angry. Why should I miss out on something I really wanted to do just so my dad could impress his poker buddies? I'm going to the concert, I said firmly. You guys are adults. You can figure out dinner for one night. My dad's face turned red. If you walk out that door tonight, don't expect us to support your little boyfriend habit. No more gas money, no more phone bill, no more college fund contributions. I was shocked. They were threatening to cut me off financially because I wanted to go on one date. Tyler picked me up an hour later and I tried to enjoy the concert, but I couldn't stop thinking about the fight. When he drove me home around midnight, all the lights in the house were off except for the porch light. I figured everyone had gone to bed angry. The next morning, I came downstairs to find my parents sitting at the kitchen table with serious expressions. My mom had clearly been crying. We need to talk, my dad said. I sat down across from them, bracing myself for another lecture about family responsibilities. Madison, my mom started, we've been thinking about your relationship with this Tyler boy, and we don't think it's healthy for you. What do you mean? I asked, confused. You've changed since you started dating him, she continued. You're neglecting your family, your grades are probably suffering, and you're becoming rebellious and selfish. My grades were actually improving since Tyler and I studied together, but I didn't bother correcting her. My dad leaned forward. We think you should break up with him. Focus on your education and your family instead of getting distracted by some college romance. I stared at them in disbelief. You want me to break up with Tyler because I missed cooking dinner one time? It's not about one dinner, my mom said. It's about your priorities. A good relationship shouldn't make you abandon your responsibilities. What responsibilities? I snapped. You mean being your personal chef? Cooking 3 meals a day for people who are perfectly capable of feeding themselves? My parents exchanged a look. Madison, that's not fair, my mom said. You know how much we appreciate everything you do. But yes, this family depends on you. Your little brother and sister need proper nutrition, not fast food every night. Your father has professional obligations that require proper entertaining. And I need a life, I shouted, surprising myself with how loud my voice was. I'm 19 years old and I've never had a real relationship because I'm too busy being your unpaid kitchen staff. My dad's eyes narrowed. Unpaid? We pay for your car, your phone, your college. You live here rent-free. Cooking is how you contribute to this household. Other kids contribute by doing chores, I argued. They don't spend 3 to 4 hours every day cooking elaborate meals. Other kids aren't as talented as you, my mom said. With great gifts come great responsibilities. I realized they genuinely believed they were being reasonable. In their minds, I was being ungrateful for wanting any kind of life outside of serving them. I'm not breaking up with Tyler, I said finally, and I'm not spending my entire life in this kitchen. My dad stood up. Then maybe you should consider whether this is the right living situation for you. The threat was clear. Comply or get out. I went upstairs to my room and called Tyler. I told him everything, the cooking situation, the threats, all of it. I was embarrassed and expected him to think my family was crazy. Instead, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Madison, that's not normal. Parents aren't supposed to threaten to kick you out because you want to date someone. But I do live here for free, I said, still partly believing their logic. Maybe I should be more grateful. You're their daughter, not their employee, Tyler said firmly. And you're 19. You should be able to have relationships without your parents' permission. That conversation was a wake-up call. I started paying attention to how my friends' families worked. None of them were responsible for all the cooking. Most of them had chores, sure, but nothing like my situation. I started asking subtle questions during our study sessions. Hey, what did you have for dinner last night? I'd ask classmates. The answers were revealing. Most people said things like, my mom made spaghetti, or my dad grilled burgers, or we ordered Chinese. When I mentioned that I did all the cooking at home, people looked shocked. All of it, my study partner Jessica asked. Like, every meal? Yeah, I said, still not fully understanding why this seemed so strange to everyone else. That's insane, she said. I can barely manage to make myself a sandwich most days. My parents would never expect me to cook for the whole family every day. These conversations started to open my eyes to how abnormal my situation really was. I began to realize that most college students my age were figuring out their own independence, not catering to their family's every culinary need. Over the next few weeks, I tried to establish some boundaries. I told my parents I'd cook dinner Monday through Thursday, but weekends were my own time. I explained that I wanted to have a social life and that Tyler was important to me. They responded by ramping up the guilt trips. My mom started talking about how disappointed she was in my selfish phase. My dad made comments about how Tyler was clearly a bad influence and was turning me against my family. My younger siblings, Emma, 16, and Jake, 14, started getting involved too. complaining about the quality of food when I made simpler meals. Emma was particularly dramatic about it. "Madison, this chicken is so dry," she'd whine about perfectly fine grilled chicken breast. "You used to make it with that honey glaze and the special seasoning." Jake would push food around his plate and sigh loudly. "I guess we're just having boring food now," he'd mutter. My mom would shake her head sadly and say things like, "I just don't understand what's gotten into you lately, Madison. You used to take such pride in taking care of your family. The manipulation was constant and exhausting. They'd bring up my cooking gifts and how I was wasting my talents. They'd remind me of all the compliments I'd received from extended family and friends about my cooking. They'd make me feel like I was being selfish and ungrateful for wanting any time to myself. But the worst part was how they started sabotaging my relationship with Tyler directly. My dad would call me during our study sessions, claiming there was a kitchen emergency that only I could handle. When I'd get home, it would be something ridiculous like not being able to find the salt or claiming the stove wasn't working when it was fine. My mom started scheduling family activities on days when she knew Tyler and I had plans. "Oh, I forgot you had plans with Tyler," she'd say with fake concern. "But Emma's teacher wants to have a parent conference tonight, and I really need you home to watch Jake and get dinner ready for when we get back." They'd guilt-trip me about missing family dinners to go on dates. "It's so sad eating dinner without a whole family here," my mom would say whenever I tried to make plans with Tyler during dinner time. "Jake was asking where you were and why you don't want to eat with us anymore." The financial threats became more frequent too. When I asked for gas money to drive to Tyler's apartment, my dad would say things like, "I don't know why I should pay for gas so you can go neglect your family responsibilities." They started monitoring my phone usage more closely, asking why I was texting so much and complaining that I was always distracted by my phone. They'd make comments about how much time I was spending talking to that boy, instead of focusing on family. The breaking point came when they scheduled a family intervention about my relationship. They sat me down one evening and took turns explaining why Tyler was bad for me. They prepared a whole speech about how relationships in college were just distractions and how I needed to focus on what really matters. My dad had even researched statistics about college relationships not lasting, printing out articles about how most people don't marry their college boyfriends. "See, Madison? This isn't going anywhere anyway. Why sacrifice your family relationships for something that's probably temporary?" My mom had prepared a list of all the ways my behavior had changed since I started dating Tyler. "You're less patient with your siblings, your cooking has gotten less creative, you seem stressed all the time, and you're not spending quality time with family anymore." They presented this intervention like they were concerned about my well-being, but it was obvious they just wanted their personal chef back full-time. The final straw came when I found out my parents had been telling extended family that I was going through a rebellious phase and dating some boy who was causing problems. When my aunt called to check on me and asked if Tyler was pressuring me to abandon my family, I realized they were actively trying to turn people against my relationship. My Aunt Lisa, my dad's sister, called me one afternoon while I was at school. "Madison, honey," she said in that concerned voice adults use when they think you're making bad decisions. "Your parents are worried about you. They said you've been acting differently since you started dating this boy." I was shocked. "What did they tell you?" "They're concerned that he's a bad influence," she continued, "that he's making you rebellious and irresponsible. They said you've been neglecting your family duties and getting into arguments." I felt my face getting hot with anger. They were spreading lies about Tyler to our entire extended family, making him out to be some kind of manipulative boyfriend who was turning me against them. "Aunt Lisa," I said carefully, "what exactly did they say about my family duties?" There was a pause. "Well, they mentioned that you've been refusing to help with cooking and household responsibilities, that you used to be such a helpful daughter, but now you're being selfish." "Did they mention that I've been cooking every single meal for this family since I was 14, I asked. Another pause. "Every meal? That seems like a lot. Breakfast, lunch, snacks, party food, special occasions, everything, I continued. Plus all the grocery shopping and meal planning. I haven't had a weekend to myself in 5 years. I could hear the confusion in her voice. "Madison, that doesn't sound right. Surely your parents cook too?" "No, they don't. If I don't cook, they order takeout and complain about how expensive it is and how they can't live like that." The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, with me explaining the reality of my situation. By the end, Aunt Lisa sounded shocked and concerned for entirely different reasons than when she'd called. That's when I decided to tell my side of the story. I wrote a detailed post on Facebook explaining the real situation, how I'd been doing all the cooking for the family since I was 14, how my parents threatened to kick me out when I started dating, and how they were now lying to relatives about why I was being difficult. I laid out everything. The grocery shopping, the meal planning, the poker night catering, the complete lack of any free time. I included specific examples, waking up at 5:30 a.m. every day to make my dad's elaborate breakfast requirements, spending every Saturday doing grocery shopping for the week, cooking 4 different meals on family favourite night, catering monthly poker games for my dad's colleagues, and never being able to participate in school activities or hang out with friends because of my kitchen responsibilities. I wrote about how my parents had convinced me this was normal and that I was gifted at cooking, so it was my responsibility to use that gift for the family. I explained how they used guilt trips and financial threats to control me, and how they were now lying to relatives about my relationship to try to isolate me from Tyler. I wrote about the intervention they'd staged, the constant sabotage of my plans with Tyler, and their complete unwillingness to learn to cook for themselves, despite being perfectly capable adults. I ended the post by saying that I wasn't asking anyone to take sides, but that I wanted people to know the truth about what was happening before they made judgments based on parents' version of events. I posted it and then turned off my phone, scared of what would happen next. When I finally turned it back on 6 hours later, my phone had exploded with notifications. My post had been shared dozens of times, and the comments were overwhelmingly supportive. Relatives I barely talked to were reaching out, saying they had no idea what was really going on, and that they were proud of me for standing up for myself. My Aunt Sarah, my mom's sister, wrote a long comment about how she'd always wondered why I never came to family gatherings anymore, and now understood it was because I was always home cooking. She said she was disgusted that her sister was treating her daughter like hired help. My cousin Rachel, who was my age, commented that she'd always been jealous of how mature and responsible I seemed, but now realised I was basically missing out on my entire teenage years. Even some of my parents. Friends commented, saying they'd enjoyed the food at poker nights, but had no idea I was doing all the work. They'd assumed my parents were cooking. Uncle Mike, my dad's brother, wrote a particularly supportive comment. I always wondered how your parents managed such elaborate meals while working full-time. Now I understand they had a live-in chef who happened to be their daughter. This is completely unacceptable, and I'm proud of you for speaking up. My grandmother on my mom's side called within hours of the post going up. She was furious, not at me but at my parents. Madison, honey, I had no idea, she said, her voice shaking with anger. Your mother never told me you were doing all the cooking. I thought she was just bragging about teaching you to cook, not that she'd made you responsible for feeding the entire family. The response was overwhelming. Extended family members, family friends, even some of my parents, because colleagues who'd attended the poker nights were commenting with support and expressing shock at the situation. But not everyone was supportive. Some family members, particularly those who were close to my parents, defended them. My dad's sister Karen wrote a long comment about how ungrateful young people don't understand the value of contributing to their families, and that cooking was a valuable life skill I should be grateful to have learned. A few family friends made comments about how I was airing dirty laundry in public, and that these issues should be handled privately within the family. But the majority of responses were supportive and validated everything I'd been feeling. People were sharing their own stories about normal family chore distributions and expressing amazement that my parents had managed to convince me the situation was normal. My mom called me crying 2 hours after I posted. She was furious and embarrassed, saying I'd humiliated the whole family and made them look like bad parents. My dad got on the phone and said I had 24 hours to delete the post and apologise or I'd be kicked out. You've made us look like monsters, my mom sobbed. People are calling us asking if it's true that we don't cook at all. Your Aunt Sarah called me 3 times demanding to know how we could put so much pressure on you. My dad was angrier than I'd ever heard him. Madison, you've crossed a line. This is family business, not something you post on social media for everyone to see. You've embarrassed us in front of our friends, our colleagues, everyone we know. Maybe you should have thought about that before you started lying to them about me, I replied, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. We weren't lying, my mom protested. We were trying to protect you from making a mistake with this boy. By telling everyone I was being rebellious and selfish, by making Tyler out to be some kind of bad influence? There was silence on the other end of the phone. Delete the post, Madison, my dad said finally. Delete it now and come home so we can work this out as a family. No, I said. I'm not deleting it, and I'm not coming home to be your chef again. Then pack your things, he said. You have 24 hours. I didn't delete it. Tyler helped me move my stuff to his apartment that weekend. His roommate was moving out anyway, so the timing worked out perfectly. It felt surreal to be packing up my life at 19, but also liberating. As I was packing, I found journals from when I was younger. Reading through them, I could see how the cooking situation had gradually taken over my life. At 14, I'd written excited entries about learning to make new dishes. By 16, the entries were all about being exhausted and having no time for anything else. By 18, I'd stopped writing altogether because I was too busy and tired. I also found old report cards that showed how my grades had suffered as the cooking responsibilities increased. My parents had always brushed this off, saying that cooking skills were more important than perfect grades, but seeing the decline over time was shocking. Emma helped me pack, and she was surprisingly supportive. "Madison, I never realised how much you were doing," she said while we folded clothes. "I just thought you liked cooking for us." I did like it at first, I admitted, but it stopped being about liking it and started being about having no choice. "I'm sorry I complained so much about the food when you started making simpler meals," she said. "I didn't understand that you were trying to have a life outside the kitchen." Jake was less understanding. He kept asking why I was abandoning the family and who was going to make his favourite meals. But 14, I guess it was harder for him to understand the situation from my perspective. My parents didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. The break in contact actually felt amazing. I cooked for myself for the first time in years. Simple things I actually wanted to eat, not elaborate meals designed to impress anyone. I went on proper dates with Tyler without watching the clock. I hung out with friends without rushing home to start dinner prep. I realised how much anxiety I'd been carrying around food and meal timing. For years, I'd been constantly stressed about having dinner ready exactly when my dad got home from work, making sure there was enough food for everyone, worrying about whether the meal would meet everyone's expectations. Living with Tyler was a revelation. We'd split simple cooking duties. He'd make breakfast while I showered, I'd start dinner while he did homework, we'd clean up together afterward. Meals took 30-45 minutes to prepare, instead of 3 to 4 hours. We ate what we wanted when we wanted, not on some rigid schedule dictated by other people's preferences. Tyler and I grew closer during those weeks. He was incredibly supportive and helped me realise how abnormal my home situation had been. We started talking about moving in together officially, maybe transferring to a 4-year university together. I also started doing better in school almost immediately. Without the constant cooking responsibilities, I had time to actually study and participate in group projects. My professors noticed the improvement in my work quality and participation in class discussions. The silence from my family ended abruptly on a Tuesday night when my mom called, crying. "Madison, you need to come home," she sobbed into the phone. "Emma tried to make dinner last night and set off the smoke alarm. Jake refuses to eat anything that isn't chicken nuggets. Your father's been eating cereal for dinner because I don't have time to cook after work." I was surprised to feel a little bad for them, but also frustrated. "Mom, you're all capable of learning to cook. There are thousands of recipes online." "It's not that simple," she cried. "You made it look so easy, but everything I try turns out terrible. Last night I burned rice." "How do you burn rice?" My dad got on the phone. "Madison, we need to work this out. This family is falling apart without you." "The family is fine," I said. "You just need to figure out your own meals." "We're willing to compromise," he said, which was the first time I'd ever heard him use that word. "You can keep dating Tyler. We'll even pay for your gas to come home and cook dinner 3 times a week." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They still wanted me to be their cook, just part-time now. "I'm not coming back to be your chef," I said firmly. "If you want a relationship with me, it needs to be as your daughter, not your employee." My mom took the phone back. "But honey, you're so good at it, and we're so bad at it. Can't you just help us transition? Teach Emma how to cook your recipes?" "Emma can learn from YouTube like everyone else," I replied. "I'm not responsible for feeding this family anymore." They called every day for a week, alternating between guilt trips and bribes. They offered to pay me for cooking. They promised I could have weekends completely free. They even said Tyler could come to dinner whenever he wanted. But I'd realised something important during my time away. I didn't miss cooking for them at all. I missed my siblings and I felt bad that they were caught in the middle, but I didn't miss the constant pressure and responsibility. Meanwhile, the Facebook drama continued. Extended family members kept commenting and sharing my post. Some of my parents' friends and colleagues started reaching out privately to offer support. My psychology professor, who'd heard about the situation from other students, even offered to connect me with campus counselling services if I wanted to talk to someone about family dynamics. 3 weeks after I moved out, my aunt Sarah invited me to lunch. She told me that the whole extended family was talking about my situation and that most of them were on my side. "Your mother called me last week," she said. "She was complaining about how hard it is to manage dinner every night, and I told her welcome to parenthood. Every parent has to figure out how to feed their family." Sarah explained that my mom had been calling various relatives, trying to get them to convince me to come home. But instead of getting sympathy, she was getting lectures about how she'd been taking advantage of me. "Your grandmother is furious," Sarah continued. She said she didn't raise your mother to dump all the household responsibilities on one child. Apparently, my grandmother had called my mom and given her a piece of her mind. She told your mother that when she was raising 6 kids, she never expected one of them to do all the cooking. She said it was ridiculous that 2 grown adults couldn't figure out how to feed themselves and their children. My Uncle Tom had apparently been even more blunt. He told my dad that expecting a teenager to cater poker nights was completely inappropriate, and that he'd lost respect for him as both a father and a professional colleague. It was validating to hear that other adults saw the situation the way I did. The most surprising support came from my dad's colleague Marcus, who'd been to several poker nights. He'd reached out to me directly after seeing the Facebook post. "Madison, I had no idea you were doing all that cooking," he wrote in a private message. "I thought your parents were just amazing hosts. If I'd known you were a teenager doing all that work while we played cards, I would have said something. That's not right." A month after I moved out, Emma texted me. She said she'd been learning to cook from YouTube and was actually enjoying it. She asked if I could teach her how to make my chocolate chip cookies, which had always been the family favourite. I invited her over to Tyler's apartment the following weekend. It was the first time I'd seen any of my family since I moved out. Emma seemed more mature somehow, and she apologised for, "I didn't realise how much work you were doing," she said while we measured flour. "I thought cooking was easy because you made it look easy." She told me about the chaos at home. Mom tried to make spaghetti last week and somehow burned it while it was boiling. Dad attempted to grill chicken, and it was raw in the middle. Jake has been living on sandwiches and cereal. We had a good day together, and I realised I could have a relationship with my siblings, separate from the cooking drama with my parents. Emma also told me about the extended family response to my Facebook post. "Grandma called and yelled at Mom for like an hour," she said. And Uncle Mike told Dad that he was disappointed in him for treating you like hired help. 2 months after moving out, my parents showed up at Tyler's apartment unannounced. I was horrified when I answered the door and saw them standing there. "We need to talk," my dad said, looking exhausted. Reluctantly, I let them in. Tyler stayed in the kitchen, but I could tell he was listening in case I needed support. "Madison," my mom started, "we've been doing a lot of thinking about what you said, and about what other people have said too." My dad looked uncomfortable but continued. "We realise we may have put too much pressure on you with the cooking situation." "May have," I repeated. "Okay, we did," my mom corrected. "We got used to having you take care of everything, and we didn't think about how that was affecting your life." They explained that the last 2 months had been a wake-up call. They'd been ordering takeout constantly, which was expensive and unhealthy. When they tried to cook, they thought about whose turn it was. My dad had gained weight from eating fast food every day. "We want you to come home," my dad said, "not as our cook, but as our daughter." I was skeptical. What does that mean exactly? My mom pulled out a piece of paper. We made a list of how we want things to be different. The list was actually thoughtful. They proposed that everyone in the family would take turns cooking dinner, including them. They would do their own grocery shopping and meal planning. They promised to respect my relationship with Tyler and never threatened to kick me out again. "We also want to pay for your transfer to the 4-year university," my dad added. "We realise we used financial control to manipulate you, and that wasn't fair." I was shocked. This was more accountability than I'd ever expected from them. "I need time to think about it," I said. After they left, Tyler and I talked for hours about whether I should consider moving back home. Part of me missed my family, especially my siblings, but I was also scared of falling back into old patterns. "What do you want to do?" Tyler asked. I realised I wasn't sure. Living on my own had been empowering, but it was also expensive and stressful. Going back home could give me a chance to save money and repair my relationship with my family if they really meant what they said about changing. I decided to propose a trial period. I'd move back home for the summer, but keep Tyler's apartment as backup. If my parents reverted to their old behaviour, I'd leave again immediately. The first few weeks back home were awkward, but surprisingly positive. My parents actually followed through on their promises. My dad cooked dinner twice a week, badly, but he tried, and my mom had signed up for cooking classes. Emma and Jake were responsible for their own lunches and helped with dinner prep. Most importantly, my parents stopped trying to control my relationship with Tyler. They invited him over for dinner and actually made an effort to get to know him. When I told them Tyler and I were planning to transfer to Oregon State together in the fall, they were supportive. It wasn't perfect. Old habits die hard, and sometimes my mom would start to assign me kitchen tasks before catching herself. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was treated as a daughter rather than a servant. The biggest test came when my dad's poker night rolled around again. Instead of expecting me to cater the whole thing, my parents ordered from a local restaurant. My dad's friends actually preferred the variety, and several of them commented that it was nice to see me socialising instead of being stuck in the kitchen all night. Tyler and I did end up transferring to Oregon State that fall. My parents helped us move and even bought furniture for our shared apartment. My mom cried when we left, but she also said she was proud of me for standing up for myself and building my own life. Looking back, I'm glad I spoke up when I did. I could have spent years more as the family cook, missing out on relationships and experiences. Instead, I learned to advocate for myself and ultimately ended up with a healthier relationship with my family. My parents still aren't great cooks, but they're getting better. More importantly, they've learned to see me as their daughter first, not as a solution to their domestic responsibilities. And Emma has turned out to be quite the baker. She's thinking about culinary school, but by choice, not obligation. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never met Tyler, never had someone outside the family validate that my situation wasn't normal. I probably would have kept cooking and sacrificing my own needs to keep everyone else happy. The Facebook post that started this whole drama is still up, and I still get supportive comments from relatives and family friends occasionally. My mom asked me to delete it once, but I refused. It's a reminder to both of us of how bad things got and how far we've come. These days, when I cook, it's because I want to, not because anyone expects me to. Tyler and I love trying new recipes together, and sometimes I'll make extra to bring home to my family. But it's my choice now, and that makes all the difference. Update. 6 months later, I thought I should update this post since so many people have been asking how things are going. Tyler and I are settled into our apartment near campus, and we're both doing well in our classes. I'm majoring in psychology now, partly inspired by this whole experience with family dynamics. My relationship with my parents has continued to improve slowly. They're still learning to cook for themselves, but they're getting better. My dad has actually gotten pretty good at grilling, and my mom discovered she likes baking. They still occasionally ask for cooking advice, but it's genuinely asking for help rather than expecting me to take over. Emma has become an amazing cook and baker. She's thinking about applying to culinary school after high school, which ironically means she might end up being a professional chef. But by her own choice, not because she was forced into it. She's also started a small baking business with her friends, selling cookies and cupcakes at school events. Jake is still adjusting to not having elaborate meals every night, but he's learned to appreciate simpler food and has even started helping with meal prep when he's home. The extended family drama has mostly died down, though my Facebook post still gets occasional likes and comments from relatives. My grandmother still brings up the situation sometimes when she wants to remind my parents not to take advantage of their children. Most importantly, I've learned that it's okay to set boundaries with family, and that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing your entire life for them. Tyler and I are talking about getting engaged next year, and my parents are genuinely excited about it, rather than seeing it as a threat to their domestic arrangements. For anyone dealing with a similar situation, it's not normal for one person to be responsible for all household cooking, especially not a teenager. You deserve to have your own life and relationships. And sometimes standing up for yourself is the best thing you can do for your whole family, even if it's painful at first.